Terry Venables was more than just a football man. He was a paradox, a brilliant tactician, a charismatic leader, yet a figure whose career was forever tangled in controversy. He didn't just manage teams, he reinvented them. He led Barcelona to a league title, Tottenham to FA Cup glory, and England to their best tournament performance in 3 decades. On the surface, he had the makings of a managerial legend, but for every tactical masterstroke, there was a scandal lurking in the background. His business ventures often ended in legal disputes. His time at Spurs saw him dragged into a bitter power struggle. Even as he masterminded England's charge at Euro '96, he knew he wouldn't keep the job. Was he a victim of circumstance and betrayal, or was he his own worst enemy? Venables walked a tightrope between genius and downfall, leaving behind a legacy that is both inspiring and tragic. His story isn't just about football, it's about power, risk, and the fine line between success and self-destruction. Terry Venables was never destined for a conventional football career. Raised in Dagenham, East London, he grew up in a working-class household, yet his mind was wired differently from most. His ability to think ahead, to see patterns others missed, made him stand out, not just on the pitch but off it. From an early age, he displayed a deep tactical intellect, questioning norms and challenging authority, traits that would define his entire career. His playing career began at Chelsea, where he was part of a generation of young talents breaking into the English game. A gifted midfielder with an eye for a pass, he was intelligent, technically sharp, and a natural leader. But Venables was never just a footballer. He was a thinker, a strategist, someone who could dissect the game beyond the obvious. That earned him a move to Tottenham Hotspur, where he became an influential figure, shaping play from midfield. Yet for all his ability, he wasn't destined to be a footballing superstar. Instead, his true calling lay elsewhere. Even as a player, Venables was drawn to coaching, tactics, and management. He studied managers, analyzed systems, and often had ideas beyond his years. Some saw it as arrogance, others recognized it as genius. But Venables wasn't just an innovator. He was a maverick in the truest sense. He believed football should be played with flair, intelligence, and adaptability. Unlike many English players of his time, he was fascinated by the continental style of play, influenced by the tactical revolution happening in Europe. While England clung to tradition, Venables was already looking ahead, ready to reshape the game. By the time he retired as a player, one thing was clear. Terry Venables wasn't just another footballer stepping into management. He was about to change football thinking, but on his own, often unpredictable terms. Terry Venables never approached management the way others did. From the moment he stepped into the dugout, he carried an unorthodox vision, one that broke away from the rigid, long-ball football dominating English tactics. His first major managerial role came at Crystal Palace in 1976, where he took a young, struggling side and turned them into one of the most exciting teams in the country. His ability to spot talent, innovate tactics, and create an attacking identity made him stand out instantly. But it was at Queen's Park Rangers, QPR, that Venables truly demonstrated his genius. He introduced a continental style of football, emphasizing fluidity, positional intelligence, and technical brilliance, concepts largely ignored in English football at the time. His tactical flexibility, particularly his use of sweeper systems and possession-based play, drew inspiration from the Dutch and Spanish football revolutions. In an era where English football still favored rigid formations and brute force tactics, Venables was thinking far beyond. His breakthrough moment came when he led QPR to the 1982 FA Cup final, an incredible achievement for a second division side. Although they lost in a replay to Tottenham, his reputation as a forward-thinking, fearless manager was cemented. He then guided QPR to top-flight promotion, proving his methods were not just experimental, they were successful. By 1984, his tactical intelligence caught the attention of Barcelona, a club desperate to restore its dominance in Spain. It was an extraordinary leap, an English manager at the helm of one of the world's greatest clubs at a time when the game was becoming increasingly Europeanized. But Barcelona didn't just want a coach. They wanted a visionary, someone who could compete with Real Madrid's dominance and adapt the club to the evolving demands of modern football. Venables had always admired the continental game, But now he had the chance to shape it at the highest level. His next move would define his legacy, not just in England, but across Europe. When Barcelona appointed Terry Venables in 1984, it was seen as a gamble. The club had never hired an English manager before, and Spanish football was deeply rooted in its own traditions. Venables wasn't just stepping into any club. He was taking charge of a political powerhouse, where failure was unforgivable and expectations were sky high. Barcelona had endured years of domestic frustration, watching their greatest rivals, Real Madrid, dominate La Liga. The pressure on Venables to deliver was immediate. What made his appointment even riskier was his tactical identity. English managers were still associated with direct, physical football, completely opposite to the technical, possession-based approach admired in Spain. But Venables wasn't a typical English manager. He believed in structured, disciplined football, which is why he implemented a 4-4-2 system, something almost unheard of in Spain at the time. His idea was simple but revolutionary. Make Barcelona defensively compact while maintaining attacking flair. And it worked almost instantly. In his very first season, he led Barcelona to their first La Liga title in 11 years, finishing 10 points clear at the top. It wasn't just a success, it was a statement. His tactical discipline gave Barcelona an edge they had lacked for years. More importantly, he ended the club's mental block, proving they could overcome Madrid's dominance. But his greatest triumph came in 1986. He guided Barcelona to the European Cup final, a feat that no English manager had achieved before with the club. The match against Steaua Bucharest should have been his crowning moment, but it turned into a nightmare. After a goalless draw, Barcelona crumbled in a dramatic penalty shootout, missing all their penalties. The European dream had slipped away. That defeat marked a turning point. In football, success is never permanent, and in Barcelona, patience is even shorter. Despite his early achievements, the pressure was now mounting. Venables had reshaped Barcelona's playing style, but was it enough to keep him in power? His position was about to come under severe scrutiny. The penalty shootout defeat in the 1986 European Cup final didn't just cost Barcelona a trophy, it shattered their confidence and, more importantly, Terry Venables' authority. Football is a brutal business, and in a club as politically charged as Barcelona, failure is rarely forgiven. The loss triggered an internal power struggle, and suddenly the man who had ended an 11-year league title drought was facing relentless scrutiny. At first, Venables tried to regain control. He made bold signings, including the controversial arrival of Gary Lineker, England's brightest striker, in 1986. Lineker made an instant impact, scoring a hat-trick against Real Madrid, but it wasn't enough to mask the growing problems. Barcelona's form became inconsistent, and the club began to slip further behind their rivals. The once disciplined, well-structured system that Venables had implemented was now being questioned. Critics labeled it too rigid, lacking the creative freedom Barcelona's fans demanded. The political landscape at the club also turned against him. The Barcelona presidency had changed hands, and with new leadership came new expectations. When results dipped further in the 1986-87 season, the pressure became unbearable. By September 1987, after a poor start to the campaign, Venables was sacked. The man who had restored Barcelona's domestic pride was now seen as expendable. But his exit wasn't just a dismissal, it was a harsh reminder of how quickly things change at the top. One year, you're a hero. The next, you're a scapegoat. Venables had introduced discipline and tactical structure to Barcelona, but in the end, the club demanded more than just results. They demanded an identity that he couldn't fully deliver. His downfall was as rapid as his rise. However, Venables wasn't done with football. His next move would take him back to England, where he would face yet another high-pressure challenge, one that would define his reputation in his homeland. Could he rebuild his career after Barcelona? That was the question that now followed him. After his turbulent exit from Barcelona, Terry Venables returned to England with his reputation still intact. He was no longer the rising star of European football, but he was still a manager with tactical intelligence and charisma, qualities that would soon land him one of the most high-pressure jobs in football, the England national team. By 1994, England was in crisis. They had failed to qualify for the 1994 World Cup, an embarrassment for a country that still saw itself as a footballing superpower. The FA needed a manager who could rebuild the team, restore confidence, and most importantly, deliver on home soil at Euro 96. Venables was chosen for the job, not just for his tactical acumen, but for his ability to handle pressure and unite a fractured squad. His tenure was far from smooth. Off the pitch, he was surrounded by controversy, legal battles, business disputes, and relentless scrutiny from the media. Many questioned whether he was the right man to lead England into their most important tournament in decades. But on the pitch, Venables had a vision. He introduced a fluid 3-5-2 system, giving England a balance of defensive stability and attacking flair. He revitalized players like Paul Gascoigne, whose genius had been overshadowed by off-field problems. And when Euro 96 arrived, Venables' England thrived under the pressure. The tournament saw one of England's most iconic footballing moments, Gascoigne's stunning goal against Scotland, followed by the infamous dentist's chair celebration. Venables' tactical decisions were proving decisive, and England fans dared to dream. In the quarterfinals, they demolished the Netherlands 4-1, producing one of their finest performances ever. But just like in Barcelona, Venables' story would end in heartbreak. England reached the semi-finals, only to face their greatest rivals, Germany. Once again, a Venables-led team was undone by a penalty shootout, with Gareth Southgate's infamous miss sealing their fate. It was a crushing end, but for the first time in years, England had played with courage, identity, and belief. Venables had restored pride in the national team, but despite the progress, he would not stay. Even before the tournament, he had announced his departure due to ongoing legal issues and FA politics. England had fallen short, but Venables had left his mark. His journey didn't end there. He still had one more chapter in club football, but this time it would be a return to his roots. After Euro 96, Venables remained a highly respected figure, but his legal troubles and controversies continued to overshadow his managerial brilliance. However, he wasn't done with football. His next move would see him return to the club that had made him a legend, Tottenham Hotspur. In 1997, Spurs were in turmoil. The club was in financial instability, performances were inconsistent, and the fans had lost faith in the direction of the team. To bring back stability, Spurs chairman Alan Sugar, despite past legal disputes with Venables, offered him a return, this time in a director of football role. The reunion was short-lived and far from smooth. Power struggles resurfaced, old tensions reignited, and within months, Venables and Sugar were once again at odds. His second spell at Spurs would end in bitter disappointment. With Tottenham behind him, Venables was still not finished with management. In 1998, he took on a unique challenge, leading the newly formed Australian national team. His impact was immediate. Under his guidance, Australia played some of their best football in years, and in the 1997 World Cup qualifiers, they came within minutes of reaching France 98. But once again, Venables was denied on the biggest stage. A dramatic collapse against Iran in the second leg crushed their dreams. It was another near miss, another heartbreak in a career that had seen so many. By now, Venables' career was winding down. Stints at Crystal Palace and Middlesbrough followed, but the magic was fading. He was no longer the innovative tactician who had led Barcelona and England to the brink of glory. The game was evolving, and the controversies that had followed him throughout his career had taken their toll. Yet despite the setbacks, Venables remained an icon of English football, a manager who had changed the way the game was played, inspired countless players, and left a legacy that could never be erased. His story wasn't just one of footballing brilliance. It was a tale of genius and controversy, success and heartbreak, loyalty and betrayal. And even in his final years, Venables remained a figure of fascination, a man whose name would always be spoken with a mix of respect, admiration, and intrigue. But what do you think? Was Venables a misunderstood genius, held back by circumstances beyond his control? Or did his own flaws prevent him from reaching the very top? Let us know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into football's most fascinating figures, make sure to subscribe for more stories of triumph, tragedy, and untold truths from the world of football.